team really quickly. So as I said, I'm Caroline Paskey. Let me start recording really quickly.
I just did. You're good.
Oh, thank you. That little note. Thank you, Stephanie. Got one more. All right, Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to let people in as they come in so I can keep going.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay. Welcome. All right, so I'm Caroline Paskey, State Hazard Mitigation Planner. We also have Aldiana from our finance team joining us, and Brian McWalters. He's a State Hazard Mitigation Planner you might see on emails as well. And Stephanie Smith is our State Hazard Mitigation Officer. Stephanie, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi, everybody. I'm right here. I have my camera on. We also have Lisa, who's more on the grant side, less on the local planning side, but she's on the team too. So her camera's on, so you can see all of us quickly here.
Thank you for introducing Lisa as well. All right. So today we'll go through the project timeline, next steps, a little bit about executing agreements and reimbursement requests, procuring a consultant, planning approval and adoption really quickly. So here's our timeline. So it's hard to remember back in December of 2021, everyone here had submitted match commitment letters so that we could apply for BRIC 2021 to FEMA. So those came in December 2021. Now come to January 2022, or back in January 2022, we submitted the application to FEMA. Now, a year later in January 2023, we finally have heard back from FEMA and we can get the planning process started. So we'll expect that the next steps will be to get your agreements executed and you'll procure consultants. And so that should happen in early 2023. And all of the work under this project, reimbursements, et cetera, should be wrapped up by September 2025 when we have the period of performance ending for this grant. Okay, so we can hop right into executing agreements and future reimbursement requests with Aldiana Zolj. If she wants to hop in, and I'll change the slides for you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Aldiana Zolj, and I'm one of the financial administrators here at DPS. We perform the compliance checks to ensure compliance with federal regulation 2 CFR 200, State of Vermont Bulletin 5 policy for grant issuance and monitoring, and then the public safety's granting plan. Couple of steps. Please complete the DPS risk survey, provide the certificate of liability insurance and any other missing items, and then sign the agreements. In order to execute a subgrant agreement and receive reimbursements, we need to perform a few subgrant compliance checks. If you don't already have one, you'll need to get a unique entity identifier. This can be obtained from sam.gov. It can be a lengthy process, so please plan accordingly. We can't do anything without it. Caroline, if you don't mind going to the next slide, please. So the risk assessment is a federal requirement, and we've developed a risk survey that assists us with assigning a risk level. Caroline has already shared this with you in her initial email, but this is what the survey looks like with some of the questions you can expect to see. Caroline, do you mind going to the next one? This should only take you about 10 to 15 minutes to fill out, and we recommend that a finance person fills this out, someone who is familiar with your policies and procedures. Caroline, do you mind going next? And this is just a continuation of those questions. And then one thing to notice here is that procurement policy and the conflict of interest policy are required by the federal regulation. They need to be written and must address certain things in it. And if you're not sure that your policies are in compliance, our audit team can review them for you. Additionally, please submit your subrecipient annual report on time. This is due to the Department of Finance and Management within 45 days of the end of your fiscal year. If the submission is delinquent, we can't do anything. If the report requires you to complete a single audit, the results need to be submitted in a timely manner. Again, if the submission is delinquent, we can't do anything. Oh, I think I see a question or a hand up. Oh, I think
Sorry, this is Benjamin Marks. Unfortunately, I can only stay for the next 20 minutes because this meeting conflicts with another I have. And so what I'd like to do is have some communication with somebody after this about how to get a copy of your slide deck and the presentation if there's a recording, because I just can't stay for the whole meeting. It was too short a time frame on calling it, and I get that it's a challenge to schedule anything these days, but I just need another way to access this stuff.
Yes, we'll definitely be sharing this afterwards. Don't worry.
Super. Thanks.
okay. And another really big important part of this is that we really need to have a current point of contact, someone who's able to respond to us in a timely manner when we have additional follow-up questions. This is really important and helps us to keep the process moving along. Caroline, do you mind going to the next slide, please? So with the executed agreement, you will receive a financial report form that you will submit. Oh, there's a background noise. When requesting this reimbursement, you need to fill out the financial report form. This is what the form will look like, and you will notice that you can only write in the yellow cells. Please be sure to put in the report period in cell number 7, and then the total expenditures in 13D and total federal share in 14D based on the split of your agreement. And at the bottom, please be sure to sign and date the form. Along with this financial report form, we need complete documentation. You must demonstrate that all of the costs are reasonable, necessary, allowable, and allocable. The invoices need to be detailed and dated along with the period of performance. Activity completed needs to be clear and the total amount due. Along with the invoice, we need a proof of payment, which is typically a copy of a check or a general ledger report. And if you're seeking salary reimbursements, we need to see some type of a timesheet along with the activity performed, date, hours, and again, a proof of payment for that requested amount. Caroline, do you mind going to the next slide, please? You will also receive an in-kind form to count time spent by staff and volunteers on the plan towards your local match. For volunteers, you'll need to determine a rate. We like to use independentsector.org. Again, please be sure to record the name, date, activity performed, number of hours. And if you're seeking mileage reimbursement, please include the rate. State has moved to using GSA approved mileage reimbursement rate. So this about sums up the finance side of the process. One big important thing is just please document everything with as much detail as possible. It ensures a much smoother process for everyone involved and allows for efficiency and transparency across the board. I hope that this was helpful, and please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions at this point, or we can save questions to the end so we can keep going with the recording, but feel free to, if you have any burning questions, let us know. So our next step is going to be hiring a planning consultant, and I'll hop right in. So this part, you really need to make sure that you're following local, state, and federal procurement standards. We will be providing an RFP template when your agreement is executed, so you can post it on the Vermont Business Registry. If you are not able to figure out that process, which you would not be alone, you can let us know and we can try to help you. But some smaller towns do prefer to reach out directly to potential planning consultants. You still definitely need to follow your local, state, and federal procurement standards. I note that there's no prescribed minimum number of consultants, but the language in the procurement requirements is that you have an adequate number of consultants. We can generally speaking say that's 3, but that's unofficial guidance. So go by what your procurement guidance says locally. And you must establish evaluation criteria prior to that selection process and document the entire process of selecting consultant. We are working under small purchases for these grants. It's just over that micro purchase threshold. That threshold includes both the federal match of this grant and the local match of the grant, so that total amount. Ben, you have a question?
Yes, sorry to be your problem child. Is it, does the bid process require you to select the low bidder?
No, so actually, because this is planning services, it can be based on their qualifications. You just need to define that beforehand, what you're using to select your consultant. And we do have a member of our audit team on the call. Flora, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that just about sums it up, Carolyn. I think that's great. Yeah. Yeah, as long as
Thank you.
you definitely document just like you said before.
Okay, thanks.
I have a number of resources here. I do recommend going and checking these resources from FEMA. The procurement website under FEMA grants is actually really good. So definitely look through those resources. Check the procurement rules online. I have a number of references here. So have the right person in the town to review those and reach out with any questions to our audit team. They will be happy to help you, and you can go through me. So just let me know if you have any questions. I provide my email at the end of this presentation. Again, I'm going to share these slides, so I'm not going to get into the details of this, but you can read through these resources and let us know if you have any questions.
Caroline, did you want me to say a couple things?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it, Flora.
Yeah, so just like Caroline said, she's provided a link to the 2 CFR regulation to the pertinent sections for you as a subrecipient to review and comply with. But I'd also like to add, so 200.317, that's for record retention, just like we've said all along. Maintain your documentation to show the steps that you've taken. That way, when we come out to see you and financially monitor you, you have those documents for us to look at. And another thing too is for contracts, very important, if you should enter into a contract, which apparently everyone's doing here today, there are many state and federal contract provisions that will need to be included. So you will want to review both your agreement, that's attachment C for the state provisions, as well as the federal regulation, which are included. So there's a link to that on the slide for the federal contract provisions. So those should all be included in the contract itself. And of course, document everything, maintain your documentation.
Caroline, you're on mute.
Thank you, Flora. All right. All right. We'll go down to planning and approval and adoption. So there's a lot of words in the slide. I did this so that I could share the slides and everyone would know what's happening. But so the step that we're at right now is in the secure funding stage. So you've successfully secured funding for the planning process. Congratulations. Now you get to go on to the next steps. You'll be hiring the consultant and they will really help you through that drafting the plan stage. So if that is mysterious to you at this point because you haven't been through this process before, don't worry, your consultant should be able to help you. If you have any questions on who you're hiring, let us know. We can let you know if we've seen plans from them before. It's like we have a question. Okay. Oh, you're unable to see the links. I'll send those out afterwards, or Stephanie might be able to help you. Thank you. All right. So once the plan is drafted, you'll be submitting it to us for review, to me, or Brian might be helping with that review process as well. And we will review the plan. We are likely to have required revisions the plan. This is more likely than usual, though usually there are revisions because we have new guidance from FEMA this year. So everyone will be learning a little bit on how to implement that new guidance. And once you make the revisions that are requested, you resubmit it, we'll review it again. In Vermont, we have program admin by state, so we'll actually approve the plan, and afterwards we can send it off to FEMA. So once the plan is approved, you'll get approval pending adoption. You'll adopt the plan, and FEMA will provide that approval letter. All right, that brings us to the end of the slides, and I want to definitely take any questions that we have at this point. So please just either put them in the chat or ideally raise your hand and we can have a conversation. And yes, we can send out the new guidance as well. All right, are there any other questions that we have? Ben, is that a historic hand raised, or do you have another question?
It must be historic because I don't see how to lower it.
Oh, okay, yeah, you just click on it again.
Yeah, not really. Oh, there we go.
I can do it for you.
There we go.
Okay.
It turns out when the comments are out, it blocks the hand. Thank you, Microsoft.
All right, looks like we have a question from the Barrytown conference room. Go ahead.
Hi, I was wondering, have the plan criteria changed since the last time that we adopted a local hazard mitigation plan?
Yeah, so that's the new policy guidance. So it's largely the same, but there's some clarifications. Some of the bigger changes, they really want to see incorporation of data that looks at the impacts of climate change on our vulnerabilities. They want more information on vulnerable populations, looking at equity, everything that's pretty predictable in terms of like where we're going in hazard mitigation planning, what you would imagine to be a good plan that aligns with our community visions. Did you have a follow-up question?
You have a list of consultants that we could send our RFP to?
Yeah, so we have a list of consultants that we keep of, who we've seen plans from. So we can share that. And if you reach out to me once the agreement is executed, I can share that list with you. We're not recommending any particular consultant over another, but they are who we've seen plans from.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Yes, Ben.
Of course, your problem child. In the past, when we've done planning activities, we work closely with our regional planning commission in order to do that. And in fact, they've served as a contractor on different kinds of planning, not this particular plan. Could you outline what the difference is between the roles of the regional planning commission and these independent consultants might be?
Yes. So let's see, I had a bullet on this. Yeah. So very good question. So a lot of towns has worked with the regional planning commissions, especially after Hurricane Irene, when there were block grants that went out and went directly to the RPCs to update these plans. So we're not able to do that to do procurement requirements from the federal level and for a number of financial technical reasons. So the RPCs will be serving as potential consultants. So they cannot help you you with that RFP process because that would infringe upon procurement requirements. So they will really want to help you, but they'll have to send you to me to help you through that process, and then they can bid on the RFP as a potential consultant. So a lot of RPCs will serve as consultants, but we can't prefer them over any others. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's disappointing, but I understand the reasons why. I mean, I'll just point out that a lot of towns are run by volunteers, and every additional layer of BS just adds to the burden that the volunteers have to shoulder. And if I sound depressed about that, it's because I am going to be the volunteer who does this. So I'm looking at 3 years of jumping through federal hoops for a plan that's really not going to change that much because we don't have a ton of hazards. But that's just me venting.
Yeah, I cannot jump in really quickly, Caroline. I'll just say I hear you. I completely understand where you're coming from, and for what it's worth, it would also be easier if we could give the money directly to the regional planning commissions like we used to. And because we can't, based on the FEMA requirements, we haven't been able to do that in a way that gives them enough money to make it possible for them to take those plans. So it's in a perfect world, it might function a little bit differently. This is the scenario that we've come up with to try and make it as simple as we can, which is us submitting the application, having a template RFP that you can use, having those match forms. So trying to do as much as we can to make it as simple as possible within the system we have to use for this process. But if there are other things that we can be doing, we'd be more than happy to hear those if you have thoughts on how we can better support you guys through it. So I totally get that it's not the most simple scenario for communities, but we want to make sure that we're supporting you in the ways that we can.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes. So reach out whenever you have questions. We want to make the process as easy as possible, acknowledging that this is the huge lift for small communities, and we recognize that. But we want to try to be the resources that are needed to get through this process. And the consultants will help you. So this is the hardest part. The consultants will help you through the rest of the process. And those consultants could be your regional planning commissions. Any other questions we have? There's no stupid questions. Please just go ahead and ask it. I'm sure there's someone else that's wondering the same thing.
We can get, this is Bob Morlino, Paul, we can get copies of these slides.
Absolutely. Yes, I know there's a lot of detail in here and you probably want to share with other staff people or volunteers. So we'll be sharing this afterwards.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, so I'm going to share my email again here. So if you have any follow-up questions you don't want to ask in front of the whole group, feel free to email me. I've also put a link here with different planning resources for the hazard mitigation planning process. Feel free to check those. That's a lot of it's geared towards the consultants that you'll be bringing on, but there's no reason why you wouldn't be also interested in getting to know the process a little bit more and resources that they'll be using. And again, don't hesitate to follow up and let us know if you're having any trouble throughout the process. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Caroline.